Hi, I'm Fiona Whelan, and we're here at my studio in Rua Red, South Dublin Arts Centre. My practice as an artist is concerned with themes of power and inequality largely, and that would include collaborating with all kinds of different groups, individuals, organisations, but at the core of all of it is this exploration of inequalities and developing responses to that. I began about 20 years ago working with Royalty Youth Project as an artist in residence, and I suppose there wasn't really a model at that time for a long-term engagement between an artist and a youth project. And I think that's important because the invitation to me was to be an artist. It wasn't a specific commission or a job, and it wasn't time-bound. So from there, I really began to develop a kind of a long-term commitment to working together across arts and youth work with Royalty Youth Project. And so that has been the kind of longest relationship that's been at the core of my work. So there's been a few projects that have been central to that. Policing Dialogues was first a 4-year project, and then kind of in response to that or off the back of that, we began to explore other themes, and that led to another project, Natural History of Hope. And then off the back of that, we really started to think about masculinities and the formations of masculinities and how it is that men and boys are shaped by the world they live in, and then how they in turn have agency and act in the world. And that's really at the core of What Does He Need? So it's a project between myself, Royalty Youth Project, and Broken Talkers, who are a theatre company, and it's creating different responses and ways to engage in the complex discussion on masculinity and how it's formed. So yeah, we've lots of different. The project is quite big at this stage. It's been going for 5 years, and it's no sign of stopping. In fact, we're really looking at ways to sustain and develop it in particular ways. So there's lots of different modes of engagement, some short-term, some long-term, from kind of programs to workshops to public artworks to performance. So it's quite broad, but all the time it's kind of bringing together groups to engage and explore these themes. The theme of power really began with the Policing Dialogues project, which was 2007, I think. So I've been in Rialto from about 2004 doing a number of shorter projects, and then I suppose that discussion around power started to emerge and became something I became really kind of consumed with exploring. And I think if you explore power with young people, the theme that needs to come will come. I think it'll come out in the conversation, and then you can kind of narrow in the focus and go there. And that's what happened with Policing Dialogues. We began a process of inquiry into power, and the theme of policing emerged. So it turned into a 4-year inquiry, of power and policing in Dublin, and involved, a core group of young people, a whole other group of young people, and the police and youth workers and various stakeholders, I suppose. In terms of form, I think the project, I suppose I'd describe it as iterative in the sense that it kind of accumulated over time. So, there was different types of performances and reading events and workshops and engagements and, newspapers, and it took various different forms, but each one was kind of building on the previous one. For me, the idea of kind of long-term relationships just seems quite natural. And it was really through the work with Royalty Youth Project that I realised the potential when you stay around, that it's kind of radical in a strange way to actually stay between projects for those periods where nothing's happening, nothing obvious is happening, but there's the kind of quiet periods, and the relationships obviously across sector are really important to that. Working with youth workers, working with people who are different, who have a different lens, who come with a completely different perspective. And I suppose the potential, the immediacy of everyday life that's in a community, just life experience, life's going on. I found all those things just really exciting. I mean, it is intersubjective. It happens between you and other people. So what I'm not trying to do is provide some kind of a service. I'm very much in it as an artist. So I'm in the space, I'm in the place, I'm with people. And then whatever comes from that interaction has me and whoever else has part of it, and it grows from there. And I think that's the potential, but it is like any relationship. I mean, they develop and grow over time, from honest, polite, lighter to being able to go a little deeper and more robust with people. And I mean collaborators in terms of other like youth workers or other artists as much as I do young people or local residents, but time allows you to push things a little further. Collaboration is one of those words that means different things to different people. For me, it's a commitment to being in this process with other people, and allowing or trusting that the process will take us somewhere collectively. So obviously we all bring our own ideas, and we all bring our own previous work and knowledge, and that's really important to collaboration, because you shouldn't have to sort of suspend something entirely. It's not, to be in a collaboration, you have to actually be there yourself with all of what you think and feel. So it's about bringing together people who are willing to come into that space, but then also trying to see between all of that knowledge, what can we actually do together? That isn't, I suppose I would recognize that distinction with participation and collaboration, where something that's participatory, often, the artist or whoever's leading it has a particular idea in mind, and really they need people to participate to make the idea develop into a public forum or something. But actually, if you changed any of those individual people, the idea pretty much stays as it is. It's not utterly affected. Whereas I think to be collaborative, everybody in the room has something at stake. They have a real agency around influencing the shape of the work. But that takes time, and it takes commitment, and it takes robust, rigorous conversations and process. Because if that's a meaningful collaboration, you've got to be able to go there and figure out what we can actually do together. I suppose for me, the first step is really about listening to young people and being around them. And not all invitations allow that. Sometimes, the expectation is you come in and you're straight into a project. So I've learned a lot from being in the presence of young people that I then go on to work with. So I think finding ways to be present to young people in their own context, in their own spaces, and writing that into the kind of plan is to me has been really important. Because I just think it's very hard to know what you will do when you don't know people. So I'd be demanding that kind of time to go to a youth centre or a school and be present and listen to things and go to events and hang out and talk and do as much of that before actually launching into the actual work. Now that's coming from thinking quite long term, but that sort of phase of listening for me would be like, just shouldn't be skipped over at all. I think it's really important to know what you're there for, what your own motivations are as an artist, and what you're interested in, and what's beyond the scope of your project, and what's beyond the scope of your role. And so obviously when you work with young people, there's a duty of care in terms of you're an adult and they might be a child or a young person. So of course there's certain responsibilities around that, but then knowing what's not yours as an artist to take on is really important as well. So I would always work quite closely. If I was working with young people, and that's largely been in the context of our LTU project, I would work very closely with youth workers. And then that becomes a support for me as much for the young person, because if something comes up that I don't know what to do with, or it's complex, then I will be constantly trying to figure that out with the youth worker, and trying to figure out where we go next with the piece of work if something has emerged, because it's life and it's human and it involves people, and you've got to take it at that pace. So that's kind of central to me. But then in terms of external supports, I'd also always look for advisors or mentors at different times that I think I need from terms of artistic nourishment or support, or something that I'm trying to get my head around in the practice that I need a particular other type of support. It can be quite lonely, as professionally lonely, I mean, not personally, but you can be grappling with a lot of stuff that you don't quite know, and it can feel personal. If a group doesn't turn up, what did I do wrong? But you just might not understand a particular social context of why they're not there, or if there's a particular ethics or concerns about representation, to have somebody or a place to be able to go back to, your own set of critical friends or mentors, to be like, this is coming up. I think you start to see yourself as part of a field of practice rather than this kind of lone artist out there trying to navigate this stuff. Because a lot of it, there will be people with experience who can help. So I think finding your own support structure in your own community is really useful. And that can be done through formal ways, but also informal ways. I'm really drawn to working with young people. I think there's a particular energy that young people have. They're in it in the moment, and they're quite honest, and they, if they're not into it, they're not into it. There's just an honesty around an energy of a group of young people that I enjoy. But I also think they're not young people, and I suppose the context that I've worked largely in is, young people living in communities that have been marginalised, in different ways. And so I think young people are not always listened to. And so I think as well as there being a value for the young people often in the process, you would hope that they're getting something from it. I think creating spaces where you can listen to young people and then find ways to develop work that actually invites other people to listen to them is what's really important. And I think that for me would be kind of at the core of it, I think, is that kind of commitment to figuring out what needs to be said, what needs to be heard, and developing work in response to that.